Hi, welcome to the music class part 3. You remember we were talking about fractions the last time we were together? Well, a fraction is nothing to be afraid of because it's just a part of something. As a matter of fact, one day in the counseling office when I was at work, they said, Larry, go cut this cake so everybody can have a piece. Well, you know, I immediately started thinking about musical notes. So I looked at this really nice chocolate cake, I cut it in half, cut the halves in half, then I had quarters, cut the quarters in half, and now everybody was able to get an equal share of the cake. I remember the one counselor was really amazed at the way I cut this cake. I just thought, well, you know, it's the music in me maybe. Well, the last time we were talking about music, we were talking about the notes. Now we're going to talk about the symbols for the silence. And they are a completely different looking symbol. Well, obviously, you don't want to get confused. Because if we look over here on this vellum of about a piece of music that's 400 years ago, you'll see that they're all basic squares and they're all triangles and things. They all look the same. And the same thing even on this vellum over here, it's still all the exact same thing. There's nothing really special about it. We've got this kind of long things and the squares and dots and stuff. So now what we're going to do is we're going to try to give some symbols of silence. This is the part where musicians or singers or members of a large ensemble, like a band, an orchestra, a choir, where they stop playing to let somebody else play. And these are called rests. Now we talked about notes, now we're going to talk about a rest. And a rest is just something more than just don't play, don't make a sound. Now they are different from a note. These things have some different shapes to it. The first one is just like our whole note, we're going to have a whole rest. It just looks like an upside down hat. Or you can even say it looks like there's a hole in the ground. Walk, 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 fall in. That's a whole rest. Only that is probably more of an H-O-L-E as opposed to W-H-O-L-E. But we're talking about the W-H-O-L-E, a whole rest. We can cut the whole rest in half. Now we come up with a half rest. But we have to make sure that we differentiate between a half rest and a whole rest. So instead of this half rest hanging from that line, it's going to sit on the line. And then we could also remember that a half starts with the letter H, and so does a hat. This looks like a hat. It takes two of these to equal one of those. This is a half note, a half rest, I'm sorry. Now, I didn't do this on the notes, but it applies. I'm going to write 1/2. I can cut these guys in half, and they're going to come up with two individual rests for them also. And they look kind of a wiggly line here. Now, since it takes 4 of these to equal one of those, they are a quarter rest. I did have some friends used to say they're a quarter note rest, but that's like saying they're a quarter note, they're a quarter sound silence, but they're not, they're silences. So these are called quarter rests. I could cut them in half, and then I'm going to come up with 8 eighth rest. Now, an eighth rest, just like the eighth note, has a little flag on it. Keeping my spatial equity. Oops. Not a good one, but not a bad one. So it takes 8 of these to equal one whole rest. I'm going to put an eighth. Now, I wish I'd done this on the note side, but it's the same thing. Now I cut these in half. Now we're going to come up with 16th rest, and we need 16 of them. Now hopefully I can do this better than I did the notes. But it starts off the same. We add a flag. Add a flag. Just like we added a flag on the 16th note, we're adding a flag on the 16th rest. How many do I have here? 2, 4, 5, 6. Don't go to sleep. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, oops, 12, 13, 14, oops, 15, 16. So it takes 16 of these. Hey, isn't that neat how it kind of goes up at an angle? Takes 16 of these to equal one whole rest. It's the same thing as in the notes. Whole note, whole rest, half rest, quarter rest, eighth rest, 16th rest. Now, here comes some more of that math. Do you remember I told you we were going to talk about math? Well, this is algebra. So I'm going to throw in some quick algebra for you. If you have 2x equals 6, this divides the equation. So whatever you do over here, you've got to do over here. So I want to get the x by itself, so I'm going to divide it by 2. So I've got to divide it by 2 over here. And now I know that x equals 3. And I could prove that. 2 times 3 equals 6. So that's my answer. Now the reason why I'm pointing out algebra for you is because whatever we did on the note side, we have to do on the rest side. So whatever we did on the sound side of the equation, we now do on the silent side of the equation. So everything here on our rests matches everything we would do on our notes. Same thing. A whole rest, half rest, quarter rest, eighth rest, 16th rest. And it's just like a typical fraction. This right here is 1/16 of that. This is 1/8 of that. 1/4 of that. 1/2 of that. You know, we could even think about this as money. This is a whole dollar bill, 2 50-cent pieces, 4 quarters. And in the old days, these would probably be called a bit. That was like 12 and a half cents. So, you know, 2 bits, 4 bits, 6 bits, $1. So this is just 1/8 of that. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put these together. We're going to talk about the sounds of high and low. That'll be our next class. See you then.